All right, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone is enjoying their weekend. For today's video, we're going to cover the weekly watch list after a pretty significant red week last week. And we have another big week ahead, right? Last week we had four major tech earnings: Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft. And then this week we have FOMC, Powell speaking on Wednesday, and then we also have Apple earnings. So pretty major week ahead, definitely stacked in terms of economic data, right? Apple, huge earnings released, and then again, FOMC on Wednesday. So let's cover the economic calendar really quickly here. Alrighty, so Monday, nothing to worry about. Tuesday, we do have consumer confidence data that comes out about 30 minutes into the open. And for the most part, that's really all I'm looking for there. Wednesday, we have ADP employment numbers, we have manufacturing PMI, we have job openings, ISM manufacturing, and then we have FOMC, and then Powell coming out at 2:30. So Wednesday definitely stacked. Thursday we have initial jobless claims, and then Friday we have non-farm payrolls. So really stacked week. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday has something that we need to be aware of. For the most part, Friday and Tuesday will be the 2 days that you kind of want to wait, 30 minutes before looking for a trade, just obviously waiting for that data, and then Wednesday as well, right? So this week is definitely going to be a week of being patient. Definitely going to have to focus on the names that do have catalysts. And if there is no catalyst, right, you definitely want to be sitting on your hands and just waiting for that market momentum. Because again, the market will be waiting for FOMC before it makes another move. The market will be waiting for Apple earnings, right, to make another move. So that primarily is what we have to stay patient for. And then after it, we can look to be, a little bit more aggressive. Okay. All right, so let's cover SPY and QQQ first, just like last week. So SPY here ended up making a lower low under 420, and we sold off about 10 points. Friday's low, we have about 409.80. So yeah, about 10 points and 80 cents from that lower low under 420. Now, SPY is pulling back, and this test of 410, right, is a huge support test. So ideally what we see in the beginning of the week is SPY actually hold 410 and bounce. Um, right, and then potentially on Wednesday following FOMC and following Powell, then it actually gets a breakdown of 410. But I would like to see a little bit more of a bounce um, with SPY here, right? Kind of relieve some of the selling pressure, allow the shorts to cover, right? Get a little bit of a bounce, just a slight relief bounce, make a lower high under 420, and then we get a move under 410. So to kind of start the week off, I would be a little bit more focused on a bounce at 410, just because, again, the market is going to be waiting for FOMC and it is going to be waiting for Apple earnings. So it is possible that we do hold this key support of 410, see a slight bounce, and then post Wednesday, right, or during Wednesday when FOMC and Powell is happening, then we can look for a fade, right, back to the downside, targeting again 410 and a break of 410. So what I'm looking at with SPY here, I'm looking at the 412 calls off of 410. And then if we do end up failing at 410, I do like the 408 puts. Now, if we take a look at this intraday, we can see how we definitely have a fight here with SPY at 410. We can see multiple attempts to really kind of make a lower low and get a breakdown, but every single lower low was followed by a really quick pop. Not a huge amount of volume, right? But definitely there was a battle here at this key area of 410. So we'll see what happens tomorrow, but definitely do want to be more so focused on a bounce. A level that I would look for confirmation for a bounce would be 411.60. Okay, if we hold 410, we get back through 411.60. I definitely would look for calls targeting again a push up into 414 and then back in this 416.20 range. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on 410 for the bounce. If we fail, and we fail at 410, what I'm going to be looking for to kind of get that confirmation is where the pops get sold into 410, right? And ideally we actually make lower highs under 410 and then we end up getting a breakdown. So I don't want to take puts, right at 410 on the break. I do want to see the pops get sold because notice here when we broke 410 on Friday, every single pop was actually back above, right? We popped back into 411. We ended up popping back, what, into 410.50 there, and again 411 into the close. So what I want to see is for SPY sellers to come and play at 410 instead of above 410. I want to see it right at 410. And if we do see it at 410, that means sellers are getting out and we're looking for a breakdown. All right. So that's the price action I need to see, lower highs under 410 and then lower lows as a confirmation of a breakdown under this key level. Keep in mind, SPY has been breaking down for 3 days, 3 days in a row, and we're at a key area. So definitely would look for a bounce to start the week off. All right, so QQQ definitely held up better thanks to Amazon earnings on Friday, but still fairly weak. Printed an inside day, very choppy day with QQQ, and the Qs are close to testing 340. Okay, so for QQQ, this 346 zone is very important for it. It's really kind of the last area um, that we made a support following this breakout in May. And then since that breakout in May, I mean, this thing ended up hitting at that high of about like 387, 388, right? So what I want to see with QQQ in order to play a potential bounce is for this to hold 346, right? On Friday, we couldn't really do it. Take a look at intraday. Right? We tried once and then we ended up seeing, a bear trap and then we ended up failing going into the close, but pretty much just consolidated under that level. So I do want to see 346 get reclaimed and I do want to see it hold. And then if it does, I do think we can see a back test of 350 and then even a move back up into 351.15, right, for a potential back test there. And then at 350 and 351.15, I would look for puts as a reversal. Another way to play QQQ on a bounce is if we see this inside day breakdown, which is 342.30. If we see 342.30 break and then we get a quick reclaim, right, and we hold for 30 minutes or so, then that can set us up for a bounce, right? It'd be a false inside day breakdown, right? Buyers could potentially snatch up the shares as a false breakdown, and then we end up bouncing. Okay, so definitely a couple of scenarios here to look for calls. For puts, 340 is the next key support, so I really just kind of want to see how SPY is acting first before going short. But I think, getting in around 350, 351.15 for puts is definitely, it's a way better R&R, and that could be, Tuesday or Wednesday. So again, the main focus for me this week is just really going to be patient, right? I have to see momentum, right? I have to feel like it's a trend day. I have to get signs that it's a trend day, and then we'll look for intraday trades. Okay, so that's really how I'm going to approach it. I don't plan on taking anything right at the open unless there is a major catalyst on an individual name and we're seeing a lot of volume and a lot of relative strength and a lot of momentum. So unless we see that, definitely not going to be trading near the open. We'll be waiting, 30 plus minutes to find that momentum. Now, let's take a look at the setups and talk about the names that I do like for the week ahead. And the first one is Tesla. So, Tesla last week, right, ended up making a lower high there on Tuesday at the 220 level, and we ended up pulling back. And on Friday, Tesla printed an inside day. Now, this level of 212 is going to be the key for Tesla to hold. Okay, it's actually 212 to 213. That's going to be a very, very important level for Tesla to hold. If we don't get the reclaim of 213, then puts will still be in play. Okay, I do think we test 200. This printed an inside day. I don't really want to go short under. Yeah, I do like puts under 205, But for me, this has to be a trade later in the week, unless Tesla shows a ton of weakness and relative weakness to kind of start the week off. Tesla can definitely be tricky to the downside, and with this inside day, it could be trappy. So under 205 is what I'm looking at for an entry for puts. I'm looking at the 200 puts under 205 with the targets of 202 and 200. But again, what I need to see with Tesla is relative weakness, right? Above average selling volume and some significant momentum to take the first break of 205. If we don't have a lot of market support, if the momentum is kind of lacking, right, if the volume is kind of lacking under 205, then we'll keep an eye on puts, but we will look for confirmation before going short. Okay, but under 205, this does have room back into 202 and 200, and I do think we get a 200 test if it actually fails at 205. Okay, definitely would consider another put play under 200 or roll up. And depending on the price action, we can also look for a bounce at 200. So again, give this one some time. Ideally, we see another pop near that 213 range that fails before going short. But if Tesla does get the reclaim of 213, then definitely would consider some calls. Notice the price action here around 213, like with Tesla on Wednesday, for example, right? We pull back in this 213, 212 range. See a little bit of interaction there, right? We ended up bouncing almost 3 points there before pulling back into the close. And then on Thursday, we tested this range twice. We ended up making a lower high there on Thursday and selling off. And then same thing on Friday, we get in this range of 212 to 213 and we fail there. So that 1 point range for Tesla is going to be very, very important for the bulls to reclaim, for them to have any sort of a chance of a bounce. Okay, and if we do get through 213, I'm looking for about 3 to 4 points of upside, so 216, 217 there. Okay, now Meta here definitely going to be on watch since it is approaching that 300 level again. So earnings last week, right, obviously gap down, pretty weak day there on Thursday. We ended up going from 295 all the way down to 80. So pretty significant sell-off for Tesla, for Meta, but they ended up buying it back up, and this candle ended up closing at 288.35. Okay, on Friday, we get close to testing 300, right? We fill this gap on the daily. So for Meta, it's going to be, very important for this to reclaim 300 for this to show any sort of strength and for a chance of a bounce. And if we fail at 300, then I'm looking for puts as a fade with a really strong R&R. So I do want to see a couple of tests of 300 before getting aggressive to the short side. Okay, I also want to see the overall market selling off to support this move. The next area I would look for puts on Meta is also under 293, because if it fails at 293, this should go back to 290, and if it fails at 290, we can set up for another 4 to 5 points of downside there. So definitely do like puts a little bit more than calls at this point, but I do think it needs a little bit of time, but the 300 level is the main focus for this week. Okay, NVIDIA, inside day with a test of 400 and one hell of a head and shoulders pattern on the daily and on the weekly, right? And really weak candle last week. So we took NVIDIA, we traded NVIDIA twice last week. But yeah, definitely ended up getting a pretty major sell day there on Wednesday. Wednesday, this was one of the weakest names. We ended up going from 436 to a low of about 416, 415 there. And then on Thursday, we ended up breaking down into 400, where we did find a lot of buyers. And then Friday, we ended up holding 400 again. So the 400 level is really the main focus for me this week. What I want to see with NVIDIA is for a break of 400 and back testing this key level. This is a huge spot for NVIDIA, right? Every single time that we've come into 400 following the break post earnings, right? Back in June, we went from 400 all the way up to 480. We pull back into a 400. Back in August, the low here is 403. We go from 403, right? into 500 there, 503. We pull back into 400, right? Get close. This low was 409.80, and we bounce all the way back up into 477. So clearly, this is a huge area of demand for NVIDIA, right? So unless we have a bearish catalyst on this, or we see the overall market, completely selling off, I don't necessarily want to get too aggressive with puts at 400, right? Because of this area being a massive demand zone. So for me to take puts on this, we have to see, right, what the overall market is doing for one. We have to see a bearish catalyst, right? And we have to see above average selling volume, right? And even with that market support that we had on Thursday and Friday, NVIDIA still held. So what I want to see with this one tomorrow, I definitely do like calls for a bounce tomorrow, again, unless there's a bearish catalyst. If we pull back into 400, we break 400, but we hold a higher low from that Thursday of last week, then I'll be in calls for a bounce. Okay, targeting 402, targeting about 405, 407, and then 410. And 410 is the next key support. If we reclaim 410, then it's possible we could see a bounce all the way back up into 416. Okay. So yeah, NVIDIA will 100% be kind of the main focus for this week. And AMD also has earnings, so that'll be another catalyst for NVIDIA. Alrighty, so Netflix here, really weak day on Friday. Netflix really couldn't hold. Oops. Sorry. Yeah, so Netflix last week, right, tried to get a higher high through this 412 range, couldn't do it. On Thursday, we ended up pulling back into 400, and then on Friday, we broke 400 and closed, just shy of 397. Now for Netflix, the main focus is going to be 400. Okay, we broke it on Friday. Netflix was showing intraday relative weakness, sold off 3-4 points there before bouncing. So what I want to see with Netflix is a back test of 400. Right, we didn't get one there on Friday. We were trying to right before the close, but we couldn't make it happen. But we didn't get a back test of 400. All right, so for me to be in puts on this name, I need to see a back test of 400. Okay, and a rejection there. So if we can get, one or two tests where we pop into 400, we don't hold, we make intraday lower highs, and then we break under 397, puts will be in play for a move, mainly targeting 390 there, right? So you're risking about 3 points for about 7 points, pretty decent R&R there. But yeah, so if it fails at 397, following a backtest of 400, puts will be in play. If we reclaim 400 and we hold, then I do like calls for a move back up into 405, and even like 408. Yeah, 408. Okay, so give this one some time, let it back test 400, and let it prove to us which direction it wants to go. All right, so Microsoft last week, this is the last one that I'm looking at. I am keeping an eye on AMD and Apple, but that's just going to be post earnings. So with Microsoft here, we have a pretty volatile week last week with earnings gap up, pretty decent earnings. We gapped up from about 330, ended up pushing into a high of like 346 before pulling back all the way back down in this key support zone of 327 to 330. And then on Friday, we tried to get back through this 335 range and couldn't make it happen. So for this week, if we kind of exclude the gap up from earnings, right, Microsoft is still in this range of 327 to basically 337, right? So it's in this 10-point range, and even following earnings, right, it couldn't sustain a higher low above this range of 336, right, 337. So for Microsoft this week, it's still within the range, so we have to pay attention to the range breaks, right? 327 to the downside or 337 to the upside. Okay, if we can get through 337, then calls can be in play for a push back up into 340. But if this continues to fail at 330 and we break 327, puts are going to be in play, right? This is going to be a daily consolidation breakdown with a lower low post earnings, and especially a post earnings false breakout. It's kind of a mouthful there, but false breakout post earnings, right? And when we see these false breakouts, right, we tend to see above average selling volume, which we got last week, and we tend to see a more of aggressive reversal to the opposite side of the range, right? Because we broke the range to the upside, we couldn't do it. Now we're back at the bottom of the range, and we tend to see aggressive breakdown at the bottom of the range, right? So we could see that this week. Definitely a top watch for me, um, under 327 for puts. Okay, let's cover some other names. Google, I think, is a little messy. I don't really want to trade Google in the next coming days. Coin here is definitely something to watch. They do have earnings, not this week, but the next. But Coin, very similar to what Microsoft looks like, right? Coin was in a daily consolidation here in the range of 80 to 72. We get this false breakout, and now we're seeing an aggressive reversal following this false breakout, right? We gapped up on news. Bitcoin was rallying through like 35K. Coin was able to gap up and push, as well as the other crypto names. And then we break this daily consolidation. It's a failure. The next few days break it down, and now we're seeing an aggressive sell-off, right? Because all of that were sellers, and then the sellers took control. Okay, so with coin, I do like it under 70. If it fails, the 70 puts will be in play for a move back down to like 65 to 64. So that's on watch. AMD is also on watch, but they have earnings on Tuesday, so we'll just probably wait. Cat will be on watch as well, but they have earnings on Tuesday, so I'm waiting for that. And then Apple, where you at, Apple? There we go. And then Apple, right? They have earnings on Thursday, so a little bit more time, but probably won't be touching Apple. Apple tends to be slower on earnings week anyway, and the premiums are pretty tough, so I'm just going to be waiting till after earnings. Okay, so yeah, huge week. Oh, and Amazon, excuse me, I missed this one. Amazon here needs to get through ultimately 130. Pretty slow there on Friday. All right, we took calls on this, and the premiums there were just, yeah, pretty awful. Um, but for Amazon to move, this has to continue to hold above 126 to 126.60. And if it does, calls can still be in play. Okay, but it just may take a little bit of time. All right, so that's it for today's video. Again, huge week, right, with Apple earnings, FOMC, ton of economic data. So be patient, right? You don't need to trade every day. You don't need to trade multiple times every single day. Last week we did very well. We focused on 2 good trades a day. We waited for that intraday momentum to present itself, and then we were able to make our moves, and we did very, very well, right? So use that, those lessons from last week, implement them this week, and just get a little bit better every single day and every single week, right? If you fail, you want to fail forward. So for this week, with all of the economic data, right, Powell, FOMC, earnings with AMD and Apple, be patient, right? It's a stacked week. Risk off, capital conservation. When we get through FOMC, when we get through Apple earnings, then we can be more aggressive, but protect your capital in the beginning of the week, make smart decisions, right? And let the setups and let the trades come to you. Okay, that's how we're going to make money this week. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow morning with the live stream. Take care.